Live from downtown Detroit, Local 4 News at noon starts now.
Even though Sean Fain calls the contracts historic, not everyone is on board. Many GM workers are voting not to end the strike. Welcome to Local 4 News at noon here on a Wednesday. I'm Rhonda Walker.
And I'm Jason Colthorpe. We watched GM workers from Local 602 in Lansing vote down this new contract with GM, joining workers in Flint, Spring Hill, Tennessee, and Louisville, Kentucky. Rod Maloney is following the votes as they come in today. Rod, what are the tea leaves showing to you as the overall vote for the GM deal continues to develop here?
Yeah, Jason, well, it's coming down to the wire. So this is a long and drawn-out process, and consider that the final UAW tentative agreement came 2 weeks ago. But the locals are voting now, and while it's looking like the UAW, Stellantis, and Ford contracts are going to be okay, although it's not final, there is significant trouble with the General Motors UAW deal. Now, I'm told the problem at GM is that a lot of the longtime full-time union members feel the contract is weighted toward the newer members. The eliminated tiers and the faster track to full-time wages help them, but the raises for those at the top do not do enough to deal with current inflation. So let's again take a look at the locals that have turned down the contract right here in the state of Michigan in significant numbers. Lansing Delta Township, Lansing Grand River locals giving thumbs down to the deal. That goes along with the Flint Truck Assembly local. That was last week. The GM Romulus Powertrain and Pontiac Metal Centers also gave it thumbs down. The UAW vote tracker is a bit behind, so we don't have all the most recent numbers, but there are some locals, big ones, particularly in the parts distribution locals, that voted the contract up. And also, there are some Michigan locals, like at Orion Assembly and Factory Zero and Hamtramck, said yes to the contract. But here's the big one. It's the Arlington, Texas vote. They went 60-40, and I'm told that's one of the locals that could have a hand in handing the leadership a victory. Now, to give you an idea how important this is to the UAW leadership, let's hear from Rich Boyer, the Stellantis UAW vice president, in a recent Facebook video he made talking about what it means to turn down the current contract.
I can't tell you how to vote, and I will not. But understand, if things go and you choose to turn down, go away, that'll put us back at the bargaining table. And always remember, once you go back to the bargaining table, all the gains we've gained, we could possibly lose because nothing's that's in stone. And how long will that take? I don't know.
So what he's saying there, you go back to the table, you could lose a lot of what you gained. So here's what we know where the national contract stands. UAW should have votes counted by tomorrow at GM. We'll have the Ford votes in by the end of the week. Stellantis should come in around that time as well, and we'll have probably most of this thing put to bed. So as it stands right now, live in the newsroom, Rod Maloney, Local 4.
All right, we'll continue to monitor, of course. Thank you, Rod. The northbound lanes of Rochester Road in the area of Auburn and Hamlin are back open now, but not after a deadly car crash. Sky 4 captured the scene earlier this morning where you can see 3 cars involved and heavy damage done to all 3 of these vehicles. Deputies say that the pickup truck crossed the center lane, hitting the other 2 vehicles. A woman in one of those vehicles died on the scene. No one else was seriously injured.
We are waiting to hear the results of a blood alcohol test after a driver smashes into a state trooper. Take a look. This is the police vehicle after the crash. It was blocking the right lane of M10 near Wyoming for a tow truck that was loading up a disabled car. Police think the 60-year-old driver was drunk. She went to the hospital but is okay. The officer also is fine.
Members of the Oxford School Board are being called to step down. Emotions running very high last night during a school board meeting. It's been nearly 2 years since 4 Oxford high school students were killed by a classmate. Now, many in the community are demanding change on the school board following the release of an independent report that found the district did not do enough to prevent the November 2021 shooting. Last night was the first board meeting since the report was released, and it's evident the grief is still there.
We want you gone. Now.
We're sorry. I'm going to resign. I'm going to resign. I'm going to resign. You never should have been here to begin with. Nothing needs to change. Are you kidding me?
Throughout the night, parents and students called for the resignation of 2 board members who were part of the board during the time of the shooting. They also called for resignations from staff who are named in that report.
Expensive homes in Oakland County are the target of some international burglars. Recent targets have been homes in Bloomfield Township and Birmingham. Police say the thieves are from South America and are highly trained. The sheriff's office is starting a task force to try and stop them. Police also say to make sure your security systems are activated if you have one. The U.S. Senate set to take up a short-term spending bill to keep the government from shutting down.
So the two-part bill would fund some government departments through January 19th. Others would get funding through February 2nd. The bill does not include more aid for Israel or Ukraine. In a vote on Tuesday, the plan passed the House with bipartisan support. The legislation now needs approval by the Senate, where it is expected to pass.
With tensions high, President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are meeting in San Francisco today.
And this comes on the heels of several close air encounters and the Chinese spy balloon that happened earlier this year. As Bree Jackson reports, the two leaders are trying to strengthen communications between the two nations.
President Biden told reporters that his meeting with his Chinese counterpart today provides an opportunity to get back on a normal course of communication amid what's become a tense relationship. President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping arriving in San Francisco, California, ahead of their face-to-face meeting today. The president planning to push his administration's priority.
America will be the place where great science changes what's possible. That's why I've never been more optimistic about America's future.
White House officials say strengthening lines of communication between the two leaders is key.
And managing competition responsibly so that it does not veer into conflict. The way we achieve that is through intense diplomacy. That's how we clear up misperceptions and avoid surprises.
U.S.-China relations have been rocky, strained by the Chinese spy balloon that floated over the U.S. and encounters in the air and sea. There are also concerns about China in Taiwan, the self-ruling island that China claims as its own.
We believe that there are areas where our interests overlap, like our efforts to combat the illicit fentanyl trade.
The meeting takes place during a critical gathering of leaders from 21 economies. Trade talks will be top of mind.
We have to try to get as good relations as China as possible, but still make it clear to them that we have real differences as to how they're treating their people, but also our companies and our people.
The two leaders will also discuss ways to restore military communications and address global challenges, including conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East. And this is President Xi's first visit to the U.S. in 6 years. In Washington, Bree Jackson, NBC News.
Well, it's shaping up to be a warmer, a little bit of a windy Wednesday, but we'll take this out there. Sun shining brightly. Detroit at 54, Howell 58. Good afternoon to you in Port Huron 54, which you've rebounded nicely from the chilly temperatures you started with today. Same with Monroe 55. Now the winds have picked up since we joined you earlier this morning, now sustained at about 10 to 15 miles per hour. But all this is coming out of the south-southwest, so that does usher in some milder conditions. Just over the last 24 hours, you can see that upward swing, about 5 to almost 10 degrees warmer across a good portion of southeastern Michigan at this lunch hour compared to noon yesterday. So sky conditions across the area pretty clear for most of us. Few clouds are mixed in closer to Metro Airport, Pontiac. Mount Clemens has more clouds than sun, but that's the only spot that we're dealing with that cloud cover. And it's most likely just because it's to the far east and we're pushing all of this eastward. So you'll be clearing out shortly where we will have the sunshine throughout the rest of the afternoon. So the sunshine making a comeback, warmer and breezy. We have the southwesterly winds topping out in the upper 50s. Quick look at the temperature trend. It's upward still from here. Tomorrow's the pick day of the week, and then we cool down. We'll time out when the rain cools us off in just a few minutes.